cold outside and it's raining, and it feels really cozy to be in here with my little flickering flame and my rain pattering. You probably can't hear it, but I can, and it's so dreary outside, and I'm about to read a mystery book. Are you ready? So the last place we left off was with Bonnie saying, let's go to London. What do you say to trying to get to London? To see Aunt Jane. Oh dear, I think I had the wrong place. Wait. No, that's right. Oh, Bonnie, yes. Dearest Aunt Jane, how I long to know if she's all right. Sylvia spoke with such enthusiasm that she coughed again. But how shall we get there, Bonnie? It is such a long way, and we have no money for train tickets. I've thought of that. Very soon Simon will be driving his geese up to London for the Easter fair at Smithfield Market. Easter falls at the end of April this year. It's almost Easter in our time. And he will want at least 2 months to get there. And we could go with him. Hush, whispered Bonnie, for at this moment the door opened and Mrs. Brisket re-entered the room. She cast her usual suspicious glance around the assembled children before beginning to read aloud from a volume of sermons, and they bent their heads and pretended to be busy themselves over their work. Every night that week, when Bonnie went to feed the hens and collect the eggs, her pleasantest task of the day, she felt a tremor of excitement. Would the key and clothes be there? But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday evenings went by without her discovering anything unexpected in the hen house. My hot tea. On Saturday, there was another inspection by the education officer. This time in the morning, he had really come to invite Mrs. Brisket to dine with him next day. But she always seized the opportunity of showing him how well behaved and biddable her pupils were. And she had them all standing in rows for an hour before his arrival. The strain of this was too much for poor Sylvia. Drenched through every day with cold water in the icy, draughty laundry, she had taken a bad cold and was flushed, heavy-eyed, and feverish. Just as the inspector entered the room where she stood, she fainted quietly away. That child, ma'am, is ill, said Mr. Friendship, pointing to her with his cane. Very likely it is all a pretense, exclaimed Mrs. Brisket, looking at Sylvia with dislike. But on inspection, it was plain that Sylvia's illness was genuine enough, and Mrs. Brisket angrily directed 2 of the big girls to put her to bed in a small room on the ground floor, where sick children were kept, so that they should not give the infection to others. A basin of cold porridge was dumped in her room, and as she was much too ill to eat it, she would have fared badly had Bonnie not come to her aid. Bonnie, discovering at dinner time that Sylvia was missing, whispered to the friendly Emma to ask where she was. Ill. In the little locker room. Ill? Bonnie turned pale. She had suspected for several days that Sylvia was ailing, though Sylvia always stoutly denied it. If she was ill, how could they escape? On the other hand, if they did not escape, what would become of Sylvia? It was not impossible, Bonnie thought, that she might die of neglect and ill attention in this horrible place. With great daring, Bonnie took a chance when Mrs. Brisket was inspecting the dormitories upstairs and ran in to visit Sylvia, whom she found conscious but dreadfully weak, flushed, and coughing. A cup of cold water stood by her bedside. "Here," whispered Bonnie. "Here, Sylvia, swallow this down. It's not much, but at least it's nourishing and warm." And she pulled from her pocket an egg, only 5 minutes since it had been laid by the hen, tossed the water from the cup out of the window, broke the egg into it, and beat it up with her finger. "I'm sorry, Sylvia, that it's so disgusting, but it will do you good." Sylvia gazed with horror at the nauseous mess, but Bonnie's bright, pleading eyes compelled her to swallow it, and it slipped more easily down than she had expected in her sore throat. Then, hearing Mrs. Brisket descending the upper stairs, Bonnie covered Sylvia as warmly as she could, gave her a quick hug, and dashed silently away. That evening, when Bonnie fed the hens and searched for eggs, she put her hand beneath one warm, protesting, feathery body and felt something hard and long among the eggs. A key! She pulled it out and found attached to it a label which said in patterns, scripted handwriting, "Tomorrow night at 10, look under the straw bales." Bonnie ran to the bales of straw which were kept for the nesting boxes and found behind them 2 warm suits of clothes, a boy's with breeches and a waistcoat, and a girl's with a thick woolen skirt and petticoat. Both were of coarse material, such as tinker children wear, but well and stoutly made, and both had beautiful, thick sheepskin jackets lined with their own wool. In the pocket of each jacket was a golden guinea. Now, tinker children are children that sold just used objects in little carts, like old used pots and pans, and they did not wear nice, fancy cloth. And a golden guinea that had been put in the pocket of each jacket is a very nice amount of coin. I think maybe in our money today, that would have been about $10, maybe even a little more. Bonnie guessed that the boy's outfit was for her and the girl's for Sylvia. For Sylvia could never be got to look like a boy. Oh, how clever and good Simon is. He must have got pattern to help him. But will Sylvia be able to travel? We must manage it somehow. She bit her lips with worry. Snatching the opportunity while it was dark and there was nobody about, Bonnie carried the 2 bundles of clothes indoors and hid them in the coal cellar behind a large mound of coal, which she was supposed to be filling Mrs. Brisket's evening coal scuttle and making up her fire. During the evening, she seized another chance to take a fresh egg to Sylvia and whisper the news to her. Poor Sylvia dutifully swallowed the egg and tried to be excited by the plan, but she felt so weak and ill that she was sure she would never manage the escape, though she dared not tell Bonnie this. Bonnie could see for herself, though, however frail Sylvia looked, and she became more worried than ever. Sunday passed in the usual tasks. Mrs. Brisket departed after 10 to the party at Mr. Friendship's, leaving the school in charge of her daughter Diana, who, as her custom was, immediately began to bully and harry the children, making them fetch and carry for her, iron her clothes, curl her hair, polish her shoes. Mrs. Brisket had forbidden her to leave the house, but she had no intention of staying in, and was proposing to visit a bazaar on the other side of the town, having calmly taken some money from her mother's purse without asking. "Here, you," she called, seeing Bonnie hurrying past. "Where are you going with that hangdog look? Come here." Bonnie came as if unwillingly. "What have you got in your pocket?" Bonnie made no reply. Diana thrust her hand in, let out a shriek of disgust. I have a picture to show you. Let me finish this sentence. She withdrew it and stared at her fingers, which were dripping with egg yolk. Thief! Miserable little thief! Stealing the eggs from my mother's hen house! She raised the dripping hand and slapped Bonnie's face with it. 6 months ago, Bonnie would have slapped her back and enjoyed it. But she was learning patience and self-command. To be embroiled in a struggle with Diana was not part of her plan. Though she longed to box the girl's ears. I was taking it to Sylvia, she said steadily. Your mother is starving her to death. She has had nothing to eat all day but 2 raw onions. Is that any business of yours? Very well, said Diana, white with temper. Since you think you can look after Sylvia so well, you shall look after her. You can look after each other in the coal cellar. Alice, help me shut them in and lock them up in the coal cellar. Perfect. They're both going to be in the coal cellar. I'm going to stop now, but I'm going to show you the picture. What is that? Is that the picture of her making them stand for a whole hour before Mr. Friendship showed up? Must be. Okay. Even though there's some very dangerous things about what's happening, Sylvia does sound very ill. Some things are working out. I hope they get away.